the birth of one person and the death of another within the same family. When a new soul arrives, a child is born, and another soul leaves. For example, the child's mother. Is there some purpose to this? No, there's no purpose to it. It's simply the same mathematics. The point is that the matrix structure of a bloodline cannot always make room for every soul. At times, only a certain number of cells within a bloodline can be occupied by someone's consciousness. This means that either the bloodline is small, it has lost some of its rights, or it is cursed. In the case of a cursed bloodline, it sometimes happens that only one child is born and no more children follow. This is how the curse manifests itself. And if a new soul comes into such a bloodline, then another soul must leave. In other words, a soul can only arrive when a place in the bloodline becomes vacant. Some bloodlines grow like swarms of bees. No matter how many souls join, there's always room for more. However, limitations such as those you've mentioned can exist. Again, you need to consider the structure of the bloodline itself. If you are aware that this pattern exists within your family, you should investigate the problem of the bloodline and determine at what point it lost its rights regarding childbirth. A bloodline might be limited in this right, either in a particular land, within a specific society, inside a certain egregorial structure, within a given state, or under a particular religion. For instance, a bloodline might be restricted in its rights only while living in a certain region. Yet, if the kin were to move to another region, those rights might suddenly reappear. So here, you need to observe and analyze. The history of your bloodline will serve as your guide in this case. You need to trace the reason why this right has been restricted. We have a grandmother who knows about a specific problem, but she is very old, and she is not planning to leave this life anytime soon. Yes, and she refuses to reveal this secret. No matter how we approach the subject, she stubbornly sticks to her decision. It is most likely that she will only pass this secret on to the next Regina of the kin, so you need to work out who the next Regina will be. Typically, it's the next most senior woman, either by age or by status. You need to send this woman to the grandmother and let her extract this information. This information must be revealed. Of course, if the old lady is well over 90, there's very little chance you'll be able to convince her that it matters to the rest of the bloodline. She's far more likely to take the secret to her grave than reveal it to anyone. Nevertheless, the information must be obtained, even if it means getting the old woman drunk and extracting it from her using these means. And what if this issue isn't resolved? If the matter remains unresolved, then you'll need to turn to a sorcerer who can summon her soul within 40 days of her death and extract the information then. There are specialists who can do this. The important thing is to act within those 40 days, before her soul leaves. The algorithms can differ significantly. For example, there is a bloodline whose members have been restricted in their right to have more than one child per generation. At the same time, however, the existential volume of the bloodline, the collective consciousness of all its members, remains very high because the founder of that bloodline, for instance, once had a high existential volume. And in this case, no one with a low existential volume has the right to enter this bloodline. The kin might be small in number, but every child born there is an outstanding individual. Every person is exceptional, so it is always an old soul with a high existential volume that can enter this bloodline. No one with a low existential volume is ever allowed in. But if a bloodline is only limited by the number of its members and not by the level of existential volume, then certain kinds of people will always join it. Again, this is an algorithm. For example, a bloodline may belong to the merchant caste, and the founder might have set an algorithm into the process of the egregorial development of the bloodline, which states, "We are developing our merchant dynasty. Therefore, no one from a higher caste than merchants will ever enter that bloodline. It simply won't happen." That is how the bloodline is programmed. Sometimes there's no such limitation, and sometimes there is. In the latter case, a person will be born with a particular commercial instinct and natural business sense. In other words, they will possess the innate qualities of a soul that needs to gain experience in business, but with the existential volume that matches that caste. You must always consider each case individually. Every egregore is unique, and no two scenarios are identical. Each one has its own particularities. Although there are general rules, they are overlaid by such a large number of specific cases that you always need to consider each bloodline individually. There is no universal algorithm for it.
уйти.